Hello and welcome to my watch reviews, and here we go again. It's another one of my own personal watches, this time a lovely Longines dress watch you can see in front of you now. I believe this might be from around, well, sometime in the 60s. I can't say for certain. This watch came to me in 2018 by way of a friend of mine and a friend of the channel, Mr. Andy Windle. He owns the vintage Japanese watch company, but back in 2018 he was an enthusiast like me, getting into watch repair. This one had been kicking around in his drawer for quite some time. He didn't have the ability to fix it. He's always been fixing quartz and digital watches, and he actually gave me this watch. Now, it came to me not looking like it is now. It was in a heck of a mess. So stay tuned, because I'm going to tell you all the story about how I got this one repaired. Now, back in 2018, I was very much green at watchmaking. I think I'd been servicing watches for around about a year, maybe just over. I'd still got some very primitive and cheap tools, and I was advancing through the hobby. So the chance to work on a Swiss watch, and that also being a Longines, and you know, these are, I guess, semi or luxury watches. For me, this was quite a big deal, and I couldn't wait to start and see what was inside. But back then I wasn't filming every watch that came across the bench that was a little bit interesting. As this was a new movement to me, I'd have been going in with the air of caution. So what's going to follow now is me showing you what was wrong with the watch by the use of lots and lots of photographs. Here's the watch as it came to me, and as you can see, it's looking very sorry for itself. The dial has got some damage on it. The watch was completely dead on arrival too, but that didn't matter. I couldn't wait to get started, so I took the case back straight off and immediately saw one huge problem for any amateur or beginner watchmaker, and that was the hairspring was all tangled and mangled. Now, here we are in 2022, the end of 2022, and I still can't do hairspring work very well, and 2018, that was going to be well beyond me. So I was pretty gutted, to be honest with you, but figured, well, let's just strip the entire movement anyway, just to be sure that there's no other problems. So first of all, the main thing to do is to take the tension off the mainspring, and I couldn't do that either. The crown was wound to maximum. Now, not even one last click in order to be able to move the click spring out the way to safely wind down the mainspring. So I was in a bit of a dilemma. Figured, well, the only thing I can really do is just remove the ratchet wheel and, fingers crossed, let it sort of unwind in one drastic motion, if you like. Now, that was my thinking in 2018. That's still a really bad thing to do. But this also backfired anyway, because the moment I tried to turn the left-handed screw in the ratchet wheel, the head of the screw completely sheared off, leaving the remaining part in the arbor, which was a catastrophe. And then laterally I still managed to remove the ratchet wheel and the spring unwound, which is what I wanted to do, but I was now left thinking I need to get a screw and I need to get an arbor as well. Add that to the list of problems. The next task was to remove the movement from the case so that I could remove the hands and dial to completely strip down the movement, and I really wanted to have a look at the dial and assess what damage it was. So once it was out, I started looking a lot more closely and thought, well, it's not damage, it's just a black mark. So started dabbing with Rodico, and lo and behold, all of that mark completely came off. There is a slight shadow near the wording, which you might see later in some other shots, but I was really amazed. I thought it was like a giant scratch or some delamination, but what was it? I found out instantly when I removed the dial what it was. It was dried oil. This movement is absolutely saturated in very thick oil, possibly 3-in-1, something from home that a non-watchmaker would use. I think quite clearly the watch has stopped for whatever reason, and the owner has decided just to pour in oil, lots and lots of it, thinking that's all it needs, just a bit of oil, and the thing will get going again. How wrong could that be? This is not actually an unusual thing to find. I've had quite a few oil-filled watches in my time, and I get a little bit of a kick from them. I do like restoring them because, well, it gives you a great sense of achievement to clean all that oil off and it work again. You feel that you've done the watch justice, but equally it's a great transformation. And as well, ironically, the oil actually helps the parts. Obviously they're not going to rust, they're not going to deteriorate while they're covered in oil. This one was just exceptional because clearly it had been poured in at the back. The watch hadn't ran, so it kept dialed down, I guess, in a drawer or on a desk or something, and that oil slowly but surely saturated its way all the way through all the parts, right up onto the dial as well. And it's lucky that we saved it when it did, because eventually that would have got under the lamination, or the laminate, sorry, on the dial, and then the watch would have just been toast and only been used for parts. Once completely disassembled and cleaned, I set about trying to find the parts that I needed. I found an arbor on eBay for £20. The guy sold me the screw for an extra £4, so it was the most expensive screw I bought for a watch to fix the hairspring. Well, at this point I'd started the Facebook group, Retro and Vintage Watches and Restorations, and I was getting to know a good friend, or now a good friend, Mr. Simon Coop, who is a retired professional watchmaker, and he said, look, send me the hairspring and I will repair it for you. He loves hairspring work. He's one of those sort of guys. So I needed to have the watch rebuilt before I could send it to him, so he had a working watch to then test the hairspring. So I waited for the arbor to turn up, rebuilt the entire watch, and sent him everything up. He was able to straighten out the hairspring, found out that it also needed a new balance staff that was too worn, rebuilt the watch, tested it, and of course returned it to me to finish it off by putting the dial and the hands on. I gave the case a sympathetic polish just to bring it back to shine and make it all nice and golden again. Refinished the acrylic crystal that was quite badly scratched in places, so just a bit of sandpaper and polywatch. It's amazing what you can do. Put it on a lizard grain print strap, and it's been in my collection ever since. The last 4 years it's been worn on and off here and there for various events and days out. You can see the movement here is now ticking away nicely. It's great, to be honest with you, to look back at something that I did so long ago and it still looks great today, and it's another watch saved at the end of the day, which is the most important thing. However, the watch, it runs well enough, keeps good enough time, don't get me wrong, but due to that hairspring error, there is still something not quite right with the watch, and we'll put it on the time grapher and you'll be able to see for yourself. Here we are in dial-up position on the time grapher, and you get a pretty reasonable trace, let's face it. Plus 14 seconds on a 60-odd year old watch, I think is pretty decent, to be honest with you. Amplitude looks alright. The beat error could be ever so slightly better, but we'll forgive that. It's when we do things like this though, we change it to the more stressful positions like the crown down, and then the trace starts to go a little bit haywire. You can see here that the beat error goes wider, the rate goes up, but it is slightly dancing around all over the place. It doesn't really know whether it wants to go fast or slow, and you kind of start seeing a little undulation in the readout if you leave it for any length of time, which is suggesting to me that possibly a pivot is slightly bent or something's out. But perhaps, I don't know, you could leave your comments below, and if you think you know what it is, be interested to hear your opinions. I'm not probably going to fix this watch any further. It doesn't get worn enough to warrant spending much more money on it. Here you can see now, of course, look in the crown up position, that one side of the palette especially is reading really interesting. Just for the end, then we'll put it down to the dial down position, and you'd think that's going to sort it out. And it has to an extent. The dial up and the down positions I always think are just the easiest ones anyway. The balance sits nicely in its jewels. It's when you put it to the other ones it stresses it. So there is a little problem, but it's a vintage watch. It can still be enjoyed. It's still being saved, and it's an achievement. It's great. That's what's so good about this hobby. You get to save something almost by your own hands, because let's face it, other people have been involved in this one too. So to finish up then, here it is on my wrist. So you get a nice wrist shot of this watch, and yes, that is a little bit of snow in the background there. The watch size, so typical vintage watch, this one is 34mm in diameter, nice and small, fits my wrist really nice, I have to say. Thickness is lovely, it is 8.1mm. Typical type of dress watch, fits under all of your cuffs, no problem at all with that. It's got an 18mm lug size as well, so nice standard straps will fit this. Lovely looking thing, touch of class. Let me know what you think. That is the end of this review, if you want to call it a review. So leave your comments below. I'll be really interested to know what you thought of this watch and its story, whether you like this type of format of video. I've got plenty of stories of watches similar to this that I've taken photographs over the years, so I'd be definitely interested to hear your feedback. Leave your comments, read every single one of them, try to reply to as many as I can. Hit the like button, really important. If you're watching this video, hit the like button. It really is going to help to grow this new channel of mine. And of course, hit the subscribe button too. Don't forget to check out my main channel, My Retro Watches. Mainly going to be restorations on there from this day forward. And there we go. Hope you've enjoyed this one. I'll see you very soon in the next.